Okay, it's Wednesday, September 21st. This is an end of the day SPY recap. And before I get into all the crazy volatility and what it meant and how it unfolded, let's just look at the actual results. The day ends up being a 3-day to the downside with a big close near the bottom red. On the weekly chart now, we seem to be getting a 3-2 continuation to the downside. And you can see here, if we go back, there are these 4 lows almost real close to each other. That looks like pretty high probability you're going to be taking those out at this point. And then there's even this all-time, the big low on that first push down in this bear market that is close enough by where that could be taken out. But since these are all together and since we're heading down there, you just have to feel that that's the target at this point, and then this as well. And at that point, you kind of see whether you fail and start back up in some form, which would take time to develop, or if you even continue lower than that. Obviously, this goes back to the monthly chart that we've always had an eye on, with this green bar failing on the upside, 2 down kind of month, working our way to the bottom. So now all of a sudden, this range, which I've been kind of eyeing for a while, ever since this bar closed, and even before this bar closed, I was talking about likelihood of following through. That's a 2 down month, and we're going to be heading down there. It looks like now that's in place to happen here, with definitely this week and next week, trading to get there. So that's kind of the big picture at the moment. Now, in terms of today, put out a couple of videos describing what to look for on Fed Day. First of all, keep in mind, to me, for what I do, my methodology of using the opening price action, first move of the day, secondary move of the day, this is not the day that you're going to get accurate, any kind of accurate price action, so to speak, on that behalf. I mean, we're waiting for the Fed announcement here. Then when the Fed announcement hits, you get all kinds of crazy action. And I'll show you how that relates to some key areas in a second. But in terms of getting a first move up on the day, some directional move to start, well, you're not going to get that because everyone's waiting for the Fed. And then in terms of what happens afterwards, this electrocardiogram looking kind of thing, I mean, that's not really a secondary move on the day relative to the first move. So all of this goes against anything normal in terms of the way I like to view day by day. But in terms of some of these levels, that's why I figured I'll look at the more bigger picture. And I had here is these blue lines were the opening range, high and low. And I showed you how this lower blue line also lined up with the midpoint yesterday. And if we went below that, we'd likely be, having a failed 2-up day to head to the bottom of that chart. And as it turns out, just to show you in a second, once you got to the bottom of that, if you really go back on the chart here, and look what the next target would be, it was very close right over here, which is actually, let's look at the weekly chart. It's a little easy to see. Once you get down, we broke through the yesterday's low, which was somewhere down here. Look at this target here on the weekly chart. It was right close to it. So if you look at this first move down after the Fed announcement, it went below the midpoint, of the prior day, did it very quickly. And I'm not saying to trade it this way, but just in terms of the logic. So if it went down there, now you're looking for it to head to this is your first target. So you could have quickly got in here if you were able to go that fast and get right out there as a first target. And then knowing, like I said, there was another target. Let's draw the line here. It was like right there. You can see here on the next move down, after hitting the low of yesterday, we also went to that target. And it's funny how that's where, let me look at it on the 1-minute chart to really show you how quickly this all developed here. Once it went down, we took out the midpoint of yesterday, got to yesterday's low some here, and then right around here was that secondary target. That's where you got the bounce. So if you were really trading this really fast, just in terms of targets, you could get in here, exit, and that would be the type of trade. Now, of course, you didn't get followed through the downside, and you didn't know if you, it was way too volatile to know if you were doing that. But in terms of a pure trade of getting below the midpoint and anticipating, this low to be taken out, you did have an opportunity. And then there was another, target right here, very close to it. You could have made a very quick trade that way. Then obviously things headed up again. So in terms of, again, going to the 15-minute chart, the only thing you could have, if you're real aggressive, there is sort of this in strat terms, a 2 down inside bar and then a reversal to the upside. And that's kind of heading up above the midpoint of the prior bar. So if somehow you wanted to, get long there, let's just say you were playing for the fake out move, down, and you wanted to say, all right, I'm going long. Well, what targets did you hit? First of all, you hit the high of the day. the intraday high, that was up here. Then you could see it went up a little bit more. And where did it go? It went right to the next target, which was the high of, once you get up here to the intraday high, which was somewhere over here, then you worked up to the next target here, which was this high, and that's where it stopped. So if you really wanted to get long in here, you had a target and a target that was reached. That was that upper blue line. And of course, you failed from there. At that point, you're heading down. And of course, in the last hour or so, it just went straight down and closed at the bottom. So again, I'm not saying there was a way to catch all these moves or anything easily, but in terms of targets and where, you wouldn't be buying near the top here. We never do that. And you would never be, selling at the bottom of that, looking for continuation. In terms of just when it reached a certain level, it reached a target. On this reversal kind of a signal, it reached two targets. So, it's just something that was there in terms of the quickness of it up and down. And then once it reversed to the downside, again, once you hit a target on the daily, it's a matter of, do you continue to the next two targets or do you fail? And you can see here, this bar clearly failed and then started lower. So, it wasn't having follow through from that point. I'm not saying, again, to get short again and know that this was going to happen. But in terms of this whole broadening action, that's what price does in a crazy kind of way sometimes. We broadened out lower, so think of it that way. I had these this megaphone drawing the whole time, and then we broadened up higher, for the 1, 2, 3, and this was a higher high here. Didn't quite continue up, but there was definitely 4 broadening higher. And now it looks like the main trend, after all this consolidation, and I was talking about that, you almost had, if you count most of today, it was like 4 days of consolidation, and it looks like we've broken out to the downside, and now we have these weekly targets below, which aligns with that whole monthly thing. So if anything, I was biased to the downside, the whole time through. I've been discussing at the end of last week even that, there's going to be, it might be tricky here given the exhaustion risk on the daily chart, but at some point you're going to get something that's going to, maybe give you at the time I said maybe a clear signal to the downside. I'm not sure this was that clear, but in terms of, expecting something up here to reverse and head lower, that's what ended up happening today. So again, I think now you have some good trading to get down to these levels. Now that we've broken out of a 4-day consolidation kind of area, we broke it, and it looks like this is going to broaden out, this kind of triangle, short-term triangle, megaphone kind of pattern. Looks like it wants to broaden out lower, and eventually, if it really broadens out, then you kind of went up here on the weekly chart, and you should be, here's the lower low, you're going to be making a lower low down here somewhere. So that's what's anticipated now. Again, we'll look at the midpoint of this bar for tomorrow in terms of, as long as that holds, we're expecting lower, and we'll kind of watch everything else. But, again, interesting day. But when kind of the levels in play, again, you shouldn't certainly have gotten hurt in any way, and you could have actually taken advantage of it with very quick trading in and out. And again, now I think there could be some good opportunities, a little clearer to take advantage of the downside action to come. But, let's just see what happens. But, finally, after 3 days here, 4 days, I include some of this day, it looks like the direction of the market for the next foreseeable future has been established.